Evelyn Harper. 67 years old. I've been a nurse at Boston Medical for more than 4 decades, the kind of woman who knows how to fix everyone else's mess except her own. That morning, after a double shift that blurred into daylight, I came home with my shoes heavy from the night's work. The house was quiet, too quiet, and the smell of lemon polish clung to the kitchen like someone trying to erase something. When I reached for the refrigerator handle, my hand froze. The white door I'd known for years was now shadowed by something new, a silver fridge, shining like it belonged to someone else's house. Across it were strips of bright yellow tape, each one neatly labeled in bold black ink, for Madison only. My daughter-in-law's name. At first, I thought it was a joke. A cruel one, maybe, but still a joke. I opened my old fridge anyway, the one I'd bought 20 years ago when my husband was still alive. Inside, everything that was once mine, leftover soup, milk, even my butter, was gone. On the top shelf sat a folded note. "Please don't use my fridge. Buy your own food." I stared at it for a long time, the words smudging as if the paper itself was ashamed. My hands trembled. I'd worked all night to keep strangers alive, and now, standing in my own kitchen, I didn't even have a place for my milk. Madison's voice floated in from the living room, light and unbothered. "Oh, hi, Evelyn. Did you see the new fridge? It's better this way. Less confusion about whose food is whose." She said it with that perfect smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Behind her, my son Ethan didn't look up from his phone. That's when something inside me cracked. Not loud, just a quiet snap, like a thread breaking in a place you didn't know was holding you together. I didn't say a word. I just looked at the yellow tape again, the word mine written over and over, and thought, not for long. For the first few days, I told myself to let it go. Maybe Madison just needed her space. They were newlyweds, after all, and still trying to figure out what ours meant. I'd been young once. I remembered how love could make you selfish without meaning to. But the yellow tape didn't stop at the fridge. By the end of the week, it had spread, like some kind of sickness. It showed up on the sugar jar, on the salt shaker, even on the dish soap by the sink. Each label, neat and deliberate, written in the same thick black marker. For Madison only. One afternoon, I came home early from the hospital. Madison was standing at the counter, sealing her lunch in glass containers, her back straight, movements sharp. When she noticed me, she smiled politely. "Oh, Evelyn, I labeled everything so there's no mix-up. Hope that's okay." Her tone was smooth, practiced. She didn't even look up as she spoke. I forced a smile. "Of course," I said quietly. "Wouldn't want to confuse whose salt is whose." She chuckled, not catching the bitterness. "You know how things can get messy when people live together. It's better to keep boundaries clear." Boundaries. That word sat heavy in my chest. I'd raised a son, worked 30 years in emergency care, held strangers' hands as they died, and now, in my own home, I needed permission to touch the salt. That night, as I made myself a cup of tea, I heard Madison and Ethan laughing in the living room. Their voices were light, free, while mine trembled over the teapot. I didn't join them. Instead, I sat at the table and stared at the bills stacked near the fruit bowl. The electricity bill had doubled. The grocery receipts were longer than usual. And the checking account, I had seen the statement, was draining faster than I could refill it. The next morning, I found a new label on the coffee machine. For Madison only. The old one, the one I'd used for years, had been unplugged and pushed into the corner. I ran my fingers over the yellow tape. That was the moment the warmth in my chest went cold. Later that day, when Ethan came home from work, I tried to bring it up gently. "Ethan," I said, keeping my tone calm, "about the fridge and the labels, doesn't it feel a bit much?" He didn't look up from his phone. "She just likes to keep things organized. Mom, it's no big deal." "No big deal," I repeated softly. "So, if I want milk, do I need to label my cup too?" He sighed, the way sons do when they think their mothers are being dramatic. "Please don't start. We'll move out soon. It's temporary." Temporary. I'd heard that word before. 2 years ago, when they lost their first apartment. 6 months ago, when they promised to help with the utilities. Temporary had a way of turning permanent when people stopped trying. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I opened the drawer in the hallway where I kept important papers. I wasn't looking for anything, just searching for something to calm the unease clawing at me. My fingers brushed against a manila envelope I didn't recognize. Inside were photocopies of my house deed and a handwritten note that stopped my breath. "If Mom moves out, we can list fast. Estimated sale, $500K. Split half." I read it again and again, trying to believe it wasn't my son's handwriting, but it was. Ethan's loops, the way he made his M. There was also a copy of a personal loan I'd given him years ago, $80,000, never paid back. Next to it, a bank deposit slip from a company I'd never heard of. Marin Consulting? My hands shook as I held the papers. Somewhere between the night shifts and the empty kitchen, I'd lost track of the people I loved most. I sat there in silence, the fridge humming in the background like a cold, steady heart. I thought about every label Madison had placed around the house, for Madison only, and realized she wasn't just labeling food, she was labeling territory. And my son had let her. The next morning, I brewed coffee in my unplugged machine, poured it into my old chipped mug, and looked at my reflection in the dark liquid. I saw exhaustion, yes, but also something sharper, resolve. When Madison passed by on her way out, I asked, "Will you two be home for dinner tonight?" She looked surprised, maybe even nervous. Not sure. Why?" "No reason," I said, smiling faintly. "Just wanted to plan something special." She left without asking what I meant. As the door clicked shut behind her, I exhaled slowly, my chest tight with both grief and clarity. I wasn't just losing space in my home, I was losing my name on the door, and I wasn't about to let that happen quietly. The next few days, I moved through the house like a stranger. Every sound felt louder. The hum of the fridge, the click of Madison's heels, even the tap of Ethan's keyboard late at night. I tried to focus on work, but my thoughts kept circling back to that envelope. I couldn't unsee the handwriting or the plan that turned my home into their target. I didn't sleep much. At dawn on Thursday, I called an old friend, Ross Miller. He used to be a paramedic before he became a lawyer. We'd spent too many nights in the same ER, handing off patients between us. If there was one man who understood exhaustion mixed with anger, it was Ross. "Evie," he said when I showed him the papers later that day. "This isn't just disrespect. It's premeditated fraud." He spread the documents across his desk, loan agreement, deed copies, the mysterious bank slip. "They could be in real trouble if they're using your assets to secure credit. You need to protect yourself." I nodded, but the word trouble didn't give me any pleasure. "They're still my family," I said quietly. "And you're still the owner of that house," he replied. "Being family doesn't mean surrendering your rights." Ross helped me file the paperwork for a 30-day notice to vacate. Legal, clean, firm. He drafted a claim for repayment of the loan and advised me to change the locks after notice was served. I sat in his office, signing each page with steady hands. My heart hurt, but my signature didn't tremble. On the way home, I stopped by a bakery. I bought 2 loaves of sourdough, the same kind Ethan loved as a boy. I wasn't sure why, maybe to remind myself I was doing this out of love. not revenge. When I pulled into the driveway, Madison's car was already there. Through the kitchen window, I saw her rearranging the pantry, placing more yellow labels on jars. Something inside me steadied. Anger turned cold and deliberate. That evening, I cooked dinner. Roast chicken, vegetables, the kind of meal that smelled like forgiveness. Madison appeared, surprised. "Oh, you cooked. That's nice," I smiled. "Sit down, both of you. We should talk." Ethan sat reluctantly. Madison kept her phone on the table, screen facing up. The silence stretched. "I found some papers," I began. "Copies of my deed, a note about selling the house." Ethan's eyes darted to Madison, who blinked too fast. "Mom, it's not what you think." I leaned forward. "Then what is it?" He hesitated. "We were just exploring options. You've been working so hard, we thought maybe you'd want to downsize." Without asking me, Madison jumped in. "We only wanted to help. Houses this big are hard to maintain. We were worried about you." Her voice was sweet, polished, practiced, but her hands twisted in her lap. "I appreciate the concern," I said evenly, "but you don't plan someone's retirement behind their back." Ethan looked at me, frustration rising. "You're overreacting. We live here too." That was it. We live here too, like squatters claiming territory. I stood, gathered my composure, and said, "You won't for long." Madison scoffed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I reached into my purse and set a white envelope on the table. "You'll find out in the morning." I left them there, staring at it, and went upstairs. My hands were shaking by the time I closed my bedroom door. For the first time in months, I locked it. The next morning, Ross arrived at 9 sharp. He wore a charcoal suit and carried his briefcase like a verdict. I met him at the front door. Together we walked into the kitchen, where Madison sat drinking coffee from her labeled mug. "Mrs. Cole?" Ross said politely. "Mr. Harper? I'm here on behalf of Ms. Evelyn Harper." Madison's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" Ross opened his folder. "This is a 30-day notice to vacate. You're required to leave the premises within that period. Failure to do so will result in court proceedings. You'll also find a demand letter regarding repayment of an $80,000 loan." Ethan's chair scraped the floor. "You can't be serious." "I'm afraid I am," Ross said. Madison's face went pale. "This is unbelievable." "What's unbelievable?" I said quietly. "Is finding my name erased from my own house." She stood up, her voice rising. "You're throwing your own son out? At your age?" "My age has nothing to do with it. I've spent 67 years cleaning up other people's messes. I'm done adding one more." Ross slid the documents across the table. "Please acknowledge receipt." Madison refused to touch them. Ethan did, reluctantly, his hand trembling as he signed. When they left the kitchen, the silence that followed was deep, almost holy. I exhaled and poured myself a cup of coffee, the unlabeled machine, the chipped mug. From the window, I saw them arguing by the car. Madison's gestures were sharp, her words lost behind glass. Ethan just stood there, his shoulders heavy. Ross placed a reassuring hand on my arm. "You did the right thing, Evie. You drew a line. Now let's keep it." I nodded, though tears burned the back of my eyes. Right didn't always feel good. Sometimes it just felt necessary. After he left, I sat in the same kitchen chair where Madison had smiled at me weeks ago. The yellow labels were still there, bright and shameless. Slowly, I peeled one off the sugar jar. The adhesive clung to my fingers. It didn't come off easily. Neither, I thought, do boundaries. 2 days later. Madison came home earlier than usual, her heels striking the hardwood like a warning bell. She didn't come alone. Behind her were 2 strangers, well-dressed, confident, and wearing the kind of polite smiles that hid sharp edges. It took me a moment to realize they were her parents. "Evelyn," her mother began sweetly, "I hope you don't mind the surprise visit. We just thought this situation needed some mature voices." Madison crossed her arms. "We shouldn't even be talking about eviction. It's humiliating." I gestured toward the living room. "Then let's discuss it properly." We sat across from each other. The four of us. Ethan lingered near the hallway, pale and silent. Madison's father cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Look, Evelyn, I understand you're upset, but you're retired. Maintaining a property like this is a lot for someone your age. Madison and Ethan could take care of it, handle the bills, the maintenance. You could move into a smaller place. Wouldn't that be easier?" His tone was smooth, persuasive. For a moment, I almost admired the confidence, but I'd seen that kind of voice before, at hospitals, in family meetings, when someone wanted to make their decisions sound like compassion. I took a slow breath. "You're suggesting I sign over my home?" He smiled. "Temporarily, of course. For efficiency." "Efficiency," I repeated softly. "That's an interesting word for theft." The room went quiet. Madison's mother's smile froze. "There's no need to be dramatic." Ethan finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Mom, please, they just want what's best." "What's best for who?" I snapped, louder than I intended. The air thickened. For the woman who's paid every mortgage bill on time for 40 years, or for the couple who hasn't paid rent in 6 months? Madison's face hardened. "We were trying to help you. You're lonely. You need people around. Don't act like you're some saint." "Maybe I'm not," I said quietly. "But I'm still the person who gave your husband $80,000 and a roof when you both had nothing." Ross appeared at the doorway right then, carrying his leather folder. I'd called him that morning, anticipating this little meeting. He nodded politely to everyone. "Good afternoon," he said evenly. "I'm here to ensure everything remains civil. Mrs. Harper, shall we proceed?" Madison's mother frowned. "And you are?" "Her attorney," Ross replied. "And a witness, should this discussion take a turn." Madison's father's confidence faltered. "This isn't necessary." Ross opened his folder and laid a set of documents on the coffee table. "It is. Actually, I've also filed notice with the county clerk regarding the attempted use of Ms. Harper's property as collateral for an unauthorized loan. Any further interference will be considered fraudulent activity." Madison's voice trembled. "What loan?" Ross handed over a copy of the deposit slip from Marin Consulting. "Your husband received transfers under a false consulting claim. The IRS will likely be in touch. I suggest full cooperation." Ethan's face drained of color. "Oh my God." I looked at him then, and my anger softened just a little. He wasn't evil, just lost, trapped between love and shame. Madison stood up, grabbing her purse. "You can't do this to us." I met her eyes. "I already did." She glared at Ethan. "Say something." But he didn't. His voice had shrunk to a whisper. "Madison, we need to leave." Madison's mother started to protest, but her husband tugged her arm. They all moved toward the door in stiff silence. Just before stepping out, Madison turned back, her eyes shining with rage. "You'll regret this. Evelyn." I didn't answer. I just picked up one of her yellow labels from the table, the last one she'd left behind, and stuck it onto her abandoned coffee mug. "For Madison only," it said. Then I placed the mug gently in the trash. When the door shut behind them, the quiet was almost painful. The house felt enormous again, echoing, but mine. Ross exhaled. "Well," he said, "that could have gone worse." I nodded. "Could have," I said softly, "but it didn't." He packed up his papers. "You'll get a follow-up about the investigation soon, but you've done what most people can't. Evie, you took back your life." When he left, I walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting behind the old oak tree, the same tree Ethan used to climb when he was little. I remembered his laughter echoing through these walls. For a brief second, my anger cracked and grief slipped through. I whispered, more to myself than to anyone, "Maybe one day he'll find his way back." The fridge hummed in the kitchen, steady and soft. No labels now, no yellow tape, just the quiet pulse of a house breathing again. But I knew the story wasn't finished. Madison was gone. Yes, but Ethan was still here, adrift, ashamed, and mine to forgive. After they left, the house became a stranger to me. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like judgment. Every sound stood out, the hum of the old fridge, the creak of the stairs, the distant traffic outside. I'd spent months dreaming of quiet, and when I finally had it, it pressed on me like weight. Each morning, I made 1 cup of coffee instead of 3. I sat in the same chair, watching the sunlight crawl across the floorboards, pretending it was company. Sometimes I caught myself setting 2 plates at the table out of habit. Then I'd laugh softly and put one back. A week passed before the knock came. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there, shoulders slumped, hair unkempt, eyes full of apology. He looked younger than 32, like the little boy who used to hide behind me after breaking something fragile. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. "You don't need to ask. Ethan, it's still your home." He walked into the kitchen and paused, staring at the empty space where Madison's stainless fridge used to be. "It's gone," he murmured. "Took it with her," I said. He nodded slowly. "She left a few days ago. Said she needed someone who'd take her side. I didn't try to stop her." There was no bitterness in his voice, only the kind of exhaustion that comes from realizing you helped build the fire that burned you. We sat down at the table, facing each other across the small distance that had once been an ocean. "I got a job," he said after a long pause. "A mechanic's shop down on Bridge Street. It's honest work. I'm starting over." I smiled gently. "That's a good start." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the table. "It's not much. $500. First payment on the loan. I'll pay you back every cent." I looked at it, then at him. "You don't owe me money, Ethan. You owe yourself the man you were supposed to be." He swallowed hard, blinking fast. "I don't deserve forgiveness." I reached out, my hand resting over his. "Then start earning it." He nodded, the smallest hint of relief breaking through his guilt. For the first time in months, I saw the son I used to know, the one who fixed broken radios with his father and laughed when nothing worked. When he stood to leave, he hesitated by the door. "I'll come by Sunday," he said. "I'll bring dinner." "Bring coffee," I told him. "We'll share a cup." After he drove away, I opened the envelope. The bills were crisp and clean, like a promise. I placed them in the drawer beside the one thing I hadn't thrown out, a yellow label that read, "For Madison only." I took a pen and wrote beneath it, "Not anymore." Weeks passed. The air grew warmer, softer. Ethan began showing up every Sunday, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to talk. He fixed the leaky faucet, mowed the lawn, and made sure the old fridge kept running. There were no more labels, no raised voices, just the hum of something healing. One evening, as the coffee brewed, Ethan grinned and said, "This brand's strong, like you." I laughed, shaking my head. "Strong's just another word for stubborn." He smiled. Guess I get that from you." When he left that night, I stood by the window, watching his taillights disappear into the dark. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt honest, quiet. Yes, but alive. I turned back toward the fridge, the sound steady and low. For the first time in a long while, it didn't sound cold. It sounded like peace.